Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Inspire One's webinar on strategizing for change.
Before we start, there are a couple of administrative instructions that we would like you to take through. Please note that launching the application will take some time depending on your connection speed. You could see the allow to go to webinar application, which will take at least 2 minutes to actually launch. So we'll request your patience for it to launch. Also, the audio bridge line would be on mute during the webinar session. Hence, we will request you to type in your questions in your Q&A window panel and we will address them during the Q&A session at the end. Allow me to introduce to the facilitator of this webinar, Ms. Suman Sethi. She is the principal consultant at Inspire One and she has been working on culture change for several clients for the past 1 decade. We request 2 minutes for her to actually take you to the presentation.
Hi, good morning everyone, and welcome to this webinar on strategizing for change. At the outset, I'd like to just lay the plan for the 1 hour so that we are all on the same page as to how the webinar would flow and what the objectives of the webinar are. I'll take a couple of minutes to align with the objectives that we are wanting to meet in this 1 hour. I will then spend some time on this entire question of why strategize for change. Why is it that we have chosen this specific very detailed area or a detailed focus on strategizing for change and not so much about how to implement change. And I'll talk about our own experience that led us to believe that strategizing for change actually is the critical element which decides whether the change process will be successful or not. We will then spend some time on what do we mean by strategizing for change. So what all does it entail? What are the things that one needs to look at? And then at the end, I'd like to share with you some cases that we have encountered firsthand with organizations, industry leaders across industries, and also various change scenarios and how in each of those situations strategizing for change actually helped the company that was undertaking that change initiative to achieve success in whatever they were trying to do. So having laid the context and the flow for the webinar, I'll now move on. So let me just spend a little time over about Inspire One. So as some of you may already know us, I won't spend too much time here, but just to recap for those of you who may be interacting with us for the first time. So we work largely in the area of people and organization development, and we partner with 3 global organizations in the learning and development space. IBM we partner with for their leadership assessment and development solutions as well as their surveys on engagement. We partner with TAC International on sales enhancement solutions, which mean the entire spectrum of sales solutions. And we partner with TMI on culture change, which is really the area that we are talking about today, as well as customer centricity and performance enhancement. I think one of the key things that I'd like to talk about on this slide, apart from the fact that we have very well researched content that we work with, is the fact that by the through the sheer spectrum of know-how that is available to us through our partners, and also what we have developed a lot in India, which is more contextualized to the Indian situations, we are in a very unique position to offer very customized and aligned change solutions for organizations, because the spectrum of knowledge that we have helps us to meet various types of change situations that organizations may be looking at, whether if that change pertains to culture, change pertaining to the focus on leadership and leadership development, change pertaining to performance enhancement. It just allows for us to work in various kind of change situations, which is what has also provided us with a lot of insight into what makes change work and what doesn't make change work. So moving on from here, I'd like to first start with the objectives of this webinar. So first, like I said, we'll cover the area of why strategize for change. We will then talk about the framework that helps us to strategize for change, the framework that we use with most of our clients when we have to work with them on change initiatives. We will also talk about certain tools that help us to strategize for change or create a plan for change. And then finally, I'll talk about how we have used these tools in this framework in various situations and created various change strategies for our clients. So why strategize for change? I think at the very outset, I don't think we have a choice. It's not something that we can say, okay, should we or should we not? To our mind, we have no choice. No matter what organization we belong to, no matter what industry we belong to, no matter what part of the world we belong to, change is coming and is coming from all fronts and in all forms. So whether it is change pertaining to organization redesign, deploying vision and values, strategy implementation, building compelling customer and employee value propositions, which is becoming so much so relevant in these times, because in the marketplace, all organizations are wanting to create compelling customer propositions to build a differentiation, and similarly for employees to build a compelling employee value proposition to be able to attract and retain employees. That in itself entails for big change. Global integration and matrix structures that are becoming a way of life for all types of organizations now. Changes that are driven by changes in the regulatory environment. There are mandates today that a lot of global organizations are talking about in terms of diversity and social responsibility, which are also driving a certain kind of change in a lot of organizations. And if that was not enough, most organizations today are struggling with a huge change scenario of having a generationally diverse workforce, and how do we manage that and how do we make it work towards benefit for all concerned. So that's one very clear reason for why strategize for change, because change is coming to us in one way or the other. We are all having to change. I think in all my readings and in all the experience that I've had, this probably is the most potent way to describe change and the challenge that change brings. And this is a quote that was written many decades back, and you can see how relevant it is in today's scenario. It very clearly says it must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate a new order of things. So if we were all not already very worried and anxious about the change processes that we have to work with, this will only add to that anxiety. However, the intent is not to add to anxiety or to make it sound very daunting or to make it sound like, oh, this seems unsurmountable. I think the idea of talking about it is that change requires its place in the minds and time of leaders. Change requires to be given center stage. Change requires to be looked at strategically, and not in the way that a lot of organizations today are looking at it, in terms of just picking up best practices and let's do a copy paste and let's try and make it work for us. Change entails a very serious consideration of what do we want to change, why do we want to change it, and how do we implement that change that will work in our environment. And that is why we need to strategize for change. That's another reason. The third reason for why we need to strategize for change, very clearly, as all of you would know, this is not new data that you're seeing, is that success rate for major change initiatives is only 54%, which is a shade better than what it used to be earlier, but still not what we would like it to be, considering the amount of investment that organizations make in change initiatives. The costs are very high, and not just the financial costs, but also the costs that lead to confusion, which means which would derail a lot of things that were working, but because we introduce change in a very unthoughtful way, even things that were working sometimes get derailed in the confusion. There is lost opportunity because we may not have thought of ways and means and stakeholders who could have actually impacted change positively, but we didn't we didn't have the time or the foresight to look at who those were and to use them, so there is lost opportunity. There is of course wasted resources, because we all are aware of the kind of investments that we end up making, whether it's in terms of, you know, the communication we make at one end of the spectrum, you know, the sheer amount of posters, danglers, and the entire material that gets created around change at one end of the spectrum, and at the other end of the spectrum, wasted resources in terms of the time that people end up spending on change. And if that time hasn't been thought through very well, if that time hasn't been strategized very well, then it is again wasted resources. And very often people end up saying that, you know, we could have actually used these resources in another way and maybe benefited more. Then of course there is the question of diminished morale, because once a change initiative hasn't succeeded, it can impact, and it does impact, morale and motivation in a big way. To our mind, and in our working with a lot of organizations, we believe that the biggest fallout of unsuccessful change is the cynicism that it creates in the system, and the fact that unsuccessful change initiatives actually make it more difficult to then plan out further change initiatives where you may want success, but because cynicism is in the system, you have to work twice as hard to first deal with that, remove that, and then get on with the new process that you're talking about. And to our mind, and actually in a lot of cases where we have been called, or we have been in discussions with companies where they've been wanting to do something significantly new, different, and introduce change. And in our conversations with them, we found out that they had tried out certain things earlier which have failed. And we believe that there is, cynicism in the system that has already set in. Then one of the very clear questions we ask those companies is this, and it can be hard-hitting, and it can be almost suicidal for us, because that's endangering our own, proposition with the client. But we believe it's of paramount importance to ask at the outset, do you have the appetite and do you have the staying power to see it through this time? Would you be willing to make very, very fundamental changes in the way your leaders behave, in the way what you measure, and so on and so forth? And what is your staying power? And if the answer to that is not very convincing, if the answer to that is not very thought through, then we don't have any compunction telling the client that maybe this is not the right time, because we believe it's all right to not embark on a change initiative at all, but it is not all right to embark on a change initiative and not see it through completely, because that does more damage than good. So it's all right to maintain status quo in some cases, rather than embark on a change initiative which will be short-lived and will create more damage in the long run. So that's why strategizing for change is critical, because all these questions need to be answered right at the outset before you start doing anything about it. So then the question is, so how do we create culture change that sticks? So how do we, therefore, so if we are very clear, and there is no doubt in our minds about the fact that strategizing for change is an imperative, it is critical. So how do we do it? How do we create change or change strategies that will stick? So let's look at some of the areas that we need to strategize on, because when we are looking at change strategy, we believe that there are two things that we need to create strategy for. The first one is, what has to change? Very often when we have met with organizations and have been in discussion with them, they have some idea of what has to change. They have some idea of even why it has to change, but they may not have been very clearly been able to articulate exactly what has to change. So let me give you an example. Working with an organization, a multinational organization, about a couple of years back, we were called in to say that, their India manufacturing sites had to be integrated with the global supply chain, so which meant that they would now align with the global supply chain, and whatever they produce or manufacture over here in India will need to be completely aligned with whatever their global supply chain objectives, etc. are. A longer term objective of this change was, of course, that each manufacturing site in the globe should be able to service any other region of the globe, and they don't need to be necessarily restricted to their side of the globe. So that was the background, and they asked us, so we would like you to come in and help enhance organizational effectiveness in these two plants or in these two sites. Help us to enhance the organizational effectiveness so that we can reach up to the global, the global standards. And it took us almost about, and I'm not exaggerating a bit over here, it took us almost about 6 months to actually get that proposal converted and start working on this initiative, because we kept going back to them again and again and asking that question, do you have a clear articulation of what do you want to change? Because saying enhancing enhancing organizational effectiveness can mean many things. But what is it that it means to you? What is it about organizational effectiveness right now that is not okay? What is it that you would like it to be? And when it becomes what you would like it to be, how will it impact business? How will it impact you? What will it change? And we had several rounds of discussions on this, and every time they would tell us, give us an approach, every time we would tell them, unless we have, collectively come to answers to these questions, we don't know what to give an approach for. So the easiest thing for us was, we have many approaches, we worked on initiatives like this. The easiest thing for us was to create a proposal, give it to them and start working on it, and even do something maybe reasonably successfully. But we were not convinced as to what is the change that they're actually wanting to bring. So considerable amount of time has to be spent on what exactly do we want to change. So if it's organizational effectiveness, then what does good look like? What are the visuals for that? So what is it that your people are doing right now that they shouldn't do, and what is it that they should start doing? As simple as that. Create visuals for that, create scenarios for that, and then let's convert those into measures and business impact and so on. The second thing that needs to be strategized is, how will this change be driven in that particular organization for it to be successful? So very often, like I said a little while back, most organizations would say, okay, change initiative, and there are certain set, best practices, and it's a tried and tested process. There are several processes that are available. There are several tools that are available, and all really very well researched and all really very well used. And a lot of organizations feel comfort in using tried and tested best practices that exist, which has merit, and we too believe that tried and tested best practices should be used. However, the question that is very critical is, which out of those are relevant for that particular organization? It is not all right to pick up just a whole basket of what is available and try and use it, because again, in our experience, most tools may not be relevant for a particular kind of change. Most tools may not be relevant for a particular kind of organization in which they are being delivered, because people are not used to those things. So look at the scenario. Not only are you wanting people to change, but you're also wanting them to do it in an unfamiliar way. You're wanting them to change or use tools and processes which they're not familiar with, which they haven't been exposed to earlier, and so on and so forth. So you are making it that much more difficult for the change to become effective. So therefore, we believe that a lot of time and strategizing has to be done on how will change be driven in a particular organization, basis several drivers, several variables that we'll talk about it. But the bottom line is, what kind of change vehicles or what kind of change tools will work in a specific organization has to be aligned and customized to that organization and what will work over there. Moving on, therefore, the starting point for any of this would be, like I said in the example that I shared a little while back, the first and the most critical step is, why do we want to change? What is the reason? What is the rationale? What is the business imperative that is driving this change? So what is the business impact? What will change? How will you know that that has changed? What are the success measures that you would apply? So again, taking an example of an organization that we are working on, and this is not just true for one organization, but actually several organizations across industries, whether it's banking and financial services or telecom, we have been called very often and we've been told, we would like to create standardized, consistent service experiences for our customers. So when a customer interacts with us, no matter who he or she is interacting with, no matter what part of the country the customer is coming from, we would like them to get a standardized experience. very often our first question to most of these organizations is, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to give a standardized experience? What will change? How will it impact your business measures? Do we know that standardizing your service experience is going to impact certain measures which are critical for you? What is hurting you that you believe that standardizing service or experience will take that pain away? Or what is the gain that you're trying to achieve that you believe standardizing service will help you achieve? Very often organizations may go into a change initiative with a solution in mind, uh, but a solution which hasn't yet been aligned to what the actual problem is. And so therefore the first starting point, the starting point of all of it would be the questions on why do we want this change? What pain will it take away or what gain will it give us? And is this the only way of doing it or are there other ways in which we can do it? And then go on to see which are the specific areas that need to be addressed to bring this change about. Does the change only entail change in competencies and behavioral skills? Does it entail change in terms of the culture? Does it entail change in terms of culture and systems and processes? All of those questions will be answered subsequent to the first question, which is what and why do we want to change? So that is the clear starting point. And we work with processes, so we have questions which we would keep asking and probing till we get a very clear visual with the organization to say, okay, this is why we want to change. These are the measures that we want to see shift, and we believe changes need to happen in these areas for these, these measures to get impacted. Moving on, we then talk about, after this has been clearly established in terms of the desired state, the measures, and why these measures, and so on and so forth. Then we go on to talking about how this change should be driven in a particular organization. But before I go into that, I think one of the things that I'd like to state over here is that one reason for why we ask these questions on why the change and what has to change is, of course, for the very, very clear objective of getting those answers. So getting success measures and getting the business impact very clear. But a bigger reason than that for asking those questions is to see, actually, along with the client or along with the organization, how seriously do they need that change? Is that change an actual real imperative, or is that something that they're getting pushed into because they need to do something because there is a lot of competition, or because there is a global mandate, or because there is a, there is some external reason or internal reason that is driving them to do something different, but they still are not very clear on, is this really an imperative? Is this something that they really need to do? So the process of questioning actually really gets the leaders to think it through completely if they haven't so far, and also to be able to think through, so how much will be they able to commit to this change? Because if that answer is that maybe not so much, or maybe this change is not that critical, then that's the point to kind of take a call and say that, okay, maybe we need to wait for this, and this is, we don't have the right reasons to do it right now, or whatever the case may be. So I think very, very crudely put, it also helps to establish leadership commitment to the whole process, which, as all of you would know, is an absolute, complete, non-negotiable element of successful change. How committed are the leaders, not just in terms of what they're stating, but in terms of what they're willing to do. So moving on to how will this change be strategized? So this is Dilbert's take on it, and it is amazing. I don't know how many of you have experienced. For anything that you're struggling with or working with, if you were to type Dilbert and that issue on Google, you would actually get very specific strips written as if, they're saying exactly what you wanted to say. And this is Dilbert's take on it, where, they're saying that we need to hire a director of change management to help employees embrace strategic changes. And then somebody else says, or we could just come up with strategies that make sense to the employees and the employees would be able to deal with. And the response to that is, no, that sounds really hard. And that really gives me a segue into the next point that we are making, that a lot of time the way that we want to implement change, we end up taking the ostensibly easier ways of doing it, because we find that the right ways of implementing change sometimes may be more difficult or tougher to implement. And so therefore, most organizations would like to, and very naturally so, take something that is more tangible, more doable, um, doesn't need to be rethought, and so therefore, the tendency to also fall back on best practices. So let's look at the systemic approach to change. So what is actually required for organizations to implement change? And I think a lot of you may be familiar with these elements over here. And in our experience, as the case may be even with you, we find that most organizations find it easiest to work at the levels of structure, roles and tasks, because those are tangible, those are visible, those are easy to do. You can create a structural position, you can get people in, you can create roles, you can give tasks to people. That's the easier thing. That's something that we are used to doing. A lot of material is available on that. However, change only is successful when it is systemic, and only limiting it to these areas doesn't make it systemic. So when we are strategizing for change, it is critical that we not only look at these, but we look at the more difficult ones, but the more critical ones to impact, which is the culture, the behavior of people, the mindsets of people, the alignment, uh, the internal communication, and so on and so forth. And because these are harder to do, obviously the level of discomfort is also higher. So one of the frameworks that we use in order to help organizations look at change systemically, because that I think the case is established, it needs to be looked at systemically, because it won't otherwise have endurance power or sustaining power. One of the frameworks that we use is a very simple framework which we call the 5-box framework, where we say that whatever strategy or whatever business imperative or whatever change or direction that you're wanting to take, you need to align certain elements of the organization to that change for it to be sustainable. And the first and foremost is, of course, the ecosystem that would enable that change. And there is no shortcut to this ecosystem. I actually mean the leadership team. When I say ecosystem, I actually mean the leaders. We actually mean how willing and how able are the leaders to make the desired change happen through their own behaviors firstly, and also very importantly through are they willing to change the measures of success for the organization? Because again, I'll just cite an example over here that a lot of organizations have said that, we'd like to become customer centric, and, we want all our functions to focus on customer centricity, and we believe that service is the route to sales and revenue in the future, and that is the route that we would like to take, and therefore we want to build a customer centric culture. All very well thought through, all very well stated. But the moment we ask them that, what is your key measure of performance, organizational performance for the company? And the answer is mostly around sales or revenue. And the next question that we ask them is, are you willing to change that? Are you willing to say that a key performance measure for your organization will now be related to customers, customer satisfaction, customer loyalty, customer retention? And then of course sales is critical, but that is not the first one that you would measure. And if there is hesitation there, and if there is a resistance there even at the leadership level, then we know that it is something that is being done because the environment says that is what should be done, but they are not yet ready, completely bought into making that shift. And that again is a point of inflection for us to say that maybe this is not the right time. Maybe when you actually feel that those could be your performance measures, should you start with change. So one of the things that I'd like to, and it's just on the side, but we've deliberated a lot on how will we know that a change need is a validated need. So when our people, our consultants, all of us go to the market and we meet organizations who are who are saying that there is a need for organization change, we have deliberated a lot internally to say how will we know that this is a validated need, this is a thought through need, this is something that the organization is serious about, and so therefore we should also give it its due. And one of the parameters, and you may find it sounds frivolous, but it's actually very critical. One of the parameters that we use is who are we meeting in the first 2 meetings that we've had? Is someone from the business part of that meeting or not? And that more often than not gives us a very clear indication on, where this is headed and how seriously committed the organization is. Because a lot of times, if it is being driven um, through channels which may not completely have the power to take decisions that it requires to take, then obviously, the leadership team is not completely invested in it yet, and it is something that they're exploring and so on and so forth. And even in those situations, we would be more than happy to help the organization explore to come up with certain answers and then see, okay, is this the right time or not? So ecosystem really comprises of the leaders, what the leaders are willing to change in measures in their behaviors, how willing are we to link those measures to people's performance management systems, how willing are we to say that, okay, growth in this organization now depends on whether people do this or they don't do this. How are we supporting it through communication? How are we supporting it through R&R? That's the ecosystem that we talk about. Then of course come the skills and the mindsets that are required to undertake that change, whether it is to do with organizational effectiveness, whether it's to do with customer centricity, whether it's to do with building a high performance culture. The skills and mindsets required for that specific change come into play over there. And then of course we also look at elements of structure and system, where we say, what structures will enable this change, what systems need to be aligned in order for us to create this change. Because any change that is implemented only in one of these boxes will not clearly be sustainable. We may go ahead and change, our entire systems, our SLAs, our turnaround times, etc. But if our people are not equipped with those skills and that mindset to use those, to deploy those, the change will be short-lived. Similarly, we may train people, we may upskill them, we may inspire them, we may really get them to buy into why this change is critical. However, when they go back to the workplace, if they believe that the systems and the structure, decision-making structure, etc., don't support what they're being asked to do, again, the change will be short-lived. Similarly, if they go back into the work area and they believe that their leaders are not aligned, they're not saying the right things, and so on, again, change will be short-lived. So I think it's an easy framework to understand, but the main message over here is change has to be strategized systemically. And if we, while we are working with organizations, our role is to continuously keep the focus on, will only imparting skills create the change? Will only making structural changes create the change? So as consultants and as partners in this entire journey, we believe that the maximum value that a partner or a consultant can create is in asking you the right questions at the right time for all of us to collectively ensure that we are making the right, we're taking the right initiatives. Moving on, very clearly, when we are looking at how to strategize for change, like I said at the beginning, there is no cookie cutter approach for change. You have to develop your own cookie cutter. You cannot pick up something that exists in the market and say, this is the mold I'm going to use, and this is going to work for me because it's worked for someone else. The reason for that is that there are various drivers and elements in each culture which will decide how a change can be palatably driven. So for instance, who is the change sponsor will make a lot of difference to how seriously is the change taken in the company. And very often L&D functions, etc., saddled with, and I'm using the word saddled because we truly believe that they are unreasonably saddled with change mandates, which actually should be change mandates of leaders. So the role that L&D and the role that OD specialists within organizations play is the role of an expert who can facilitate, who can help, but change has to be driven by leaders. And when I ask the question, and you may say that that's true for all organizations, so what is so not cookie cutter about it? I think what we mean over here is, who are the leaders in the system who will, who if drive this change, will make it more palatable to people. So there are certain leaders in the system who are seen as people who create impact, who are seen as people who will have an impact, who will be able to influence, who will be able to drive. Are they part of the change sponsorship team? Are they the ones who are driving it? What is the leadership style? What style works in that company? So for instance, one of the best practices says that leaders should be hugely inspirational, and they should be able to, very inspiringly communicate with people and drive them and motivate them and so on and so forth, which is great, and which is a great best practice to have. However, if in a company your people are used to a certain leader who may not be very inspiring in the way he or she communicates, but inspires through other ways, inspires through his expertise, inspires through the way he coaches people, inspires through the way that he gets things done. Inspiration can come in various ways, and all organizations also look at inspiration in various ways. So whereas a very young and, an organization with a very young workforce may get hugely impacted with a very, very inspirationally speaking leader, another organization which is a more formal, which is a more mature organization, may actually look at a very inspirationally communicating leader as a little frivolous input, and they may actually look at being inspired by expertise. They may look at being inspired by the kind of work that the leader has done. They may look at being inspired by, the leader actually coaching them on how to do things. And so therefore, if you give them, the best practice of making all leaders communicate really inspirationally, that may not cut ice over there. And so therefore, we need to strategize on what kind of a leadership style will drive change in that organization and enable more of that. Use that, leverage that, because that works over there. Very critically, I think the mold for your organization will have to be designed on what has worked in the past. So a lot of the diagnostic work that we do, and also just to bring a point here, most of the things that I'm talking about over here are things that we derive at the stage of diagnostics with an organization. So the diagnostics is aimed at actually coming up with a strategy on how will change be successful in this organization. Very critically, what has worked in the past. So we will spend a lot of time with leaders and people in the organization asking them, what are the stories in their history that they consider really, great success stories where they were able to do things significantly differently from how they do it normally, and then we do a lot of probing on what made it work. So what has worked in the past is likely to also work in the future. So pick that up because that has worked in that environment. Equally importantly, what has not worked. And make sure that your strategy takes care of the fact that we don't put in a lot of things that haven't worked in the system and try and push it. So for instance, one of the organizations that we worked with, the people who were in the project team had come from a different industry, and they were very, very keen on, the changes happening, and we must brand it, and there must be a mascot, and there must be a lot of visual communication, posters, danglers, what have you, stickers, laptop stickers, etc., to build energy and momentum. Again, a great best practice, but relevant for a certain type of organization. So this organization, this team spent a lot of time and effort and money and very good intent to, create all of this and so on and so forth. However, because this is not what this, people in this organization were used to, it didn't have the impact that they were expecting it would. And, in this organization, what really needed to be done was train the managers on how are they going to communicate every single day with their people in order to percolate that change down to the grassroots. What are the conversations they will have, how will they change the behaviors of people, and so on and so forth. And that is what worked in that company. So what has worked and what has not worked is very, very critical. And also drawing on that, what are the rituals and ways of working that people are used to over here, which should then be used rather than constructing anything completely new. So there are several change best practices, all of us know about the fact that change champions are a very critical part of making sure that change gets embedded, and we make change champions also a very critical part of most of the approaches that we talk about. All of us know that communication strategy is very critical, branding is very critical. All of us know leadership town halls are good to have when you're changing. All of us know that there are certain kinds of workshops that need to happen specifically on change management, specifically on things that people have to change. All of us know that we have to work with change specialists. all of which is fine. However, again, I'm reiterating, it is the way that we will decide which out of these are relevant for your company and how do they have to be created. So how do we create energy in an organization? I just took an example. So in one organization, all of that fanfare and building and teasers, etc., will work really well. In another organization, just managers relentlessly talking about the same thing over and over again is what will build energy. I'll give you an example of an organization that we worked with last year, and they were wanting to bring about a change which was necessitated by the business imperative of growth. So they said that we need to grow many-fold in the coming 4 or 5 years, and for that growth it is imperative that the span of control of our frontline people is increased, by which what they meant was that the company was working with third-party partners for providing service and also for sales. And they felt that each of their employees who is responsible for managing these partners should be able to manage at least 3 times more the number of partners than they're managing currently. So which meant a significant amount of change in the roles of these people, the skills that they needed, the measures that they would be measured on, and so on and so forth, and not just for the front line but also for the managers of the front line and the managers of the managers, because if you're wanting the front line to do something differently, then you have to equip the managers also differently to enable that change. So when we started working on this initiative and we were reasonably clear on what needed to be achieved, there were these ideas of, okay, let's build a huge internal communication strategy and so on and so forth, and let's get champions. So who will be the champions, who will be identified, and so on. And then we went in to do the diagnostics, and we found out during the diagnostics that one of the greatest strengths in this organization was their operational excellence, was the fact that once they decided that a certain thing needed to be done and they converted that certain thing into a KPI, it happened, and it happened without any other fanfare or supporting activities. And therefore, after we did the diagnostics, what we suggested to this company is, all that you need to do in the first go is, let's just look at changing the KPIs of these people across the function. Let's not change anything else. Let's just change their KPIs, because what we are asking them to deliver is different from what they were delivering earlier. Let's start measuring them on that, and let's then equip them with the skills and competencies that they require to deliver on those KPIs. And that's exactly what we did. So we designed those KPIs. They internally, percolated those KPIs. We did these workshops, which was a certification journey over a period of time. And guess what? Change happened. Within a matter of 8 months, their frontliners were doing exactly what they wanted them to do. There was increase in productivity. They could handle more partners than they were handling earlier. The managers were performing a more strategic role. They had come up with strategic initiatives. They were working on those. It just worked like that. They didn't need to have champions. They didn't need a very involved communication strategy. Of course, something was required to align everybody, but they didn't need to do anything else. And within 3 months of this happening, success stories started pouring in, and that created even more energy. Then they had their 8 months reward and recognition thing, where they acknowledged the success stories, and the change just happened as simple as that. And which also again led us to believe that all of this is not required for all organizations, because companies are able to sustain basis what works in their organizations. Similarly, what change vehicles should be applied? Will change champions work? Will some other vehicles work? Which are the initiatives that will be seen as credible? Because we mustn't do something that is completely out of the way, that people are not used to, because they would also look at that with a little bit of a suspicion. So it should be something that has credibility. Initiatives that can be backed by palatable action, things that if we are claiming, so even if we are saying that we want change champions, then going the whole way, then not just saying that you're a change champion and today onwards you have to do business as usual and be a change champion and that's how it'll work. It's really not going to work, because if you want a guy to be a change champion, then that's the role he needs to perform largely. He needs to be given that bandwidth, he needs to be measured on that role, and only that is seen as palatable action backing a decision of having change champions. Otherwise, it's a stated intent, not a real intent. Initiatives that will align to the way of working, like I said, And Dilbert again says it very succinctly. Somebody is talking about, I have become a change agent and this is what I have done, which is a lot of words. And the impact that it has on people is more cynicism of, if this is what a change champion is going to do I really want to be part of the change process? Similarly, a boss is creating a change champion, a manager is creating a change champion, and the moment the change champion says, can I formalize it in any way? Can I align my role around it, and so on and so forth? And that's where people step back and say, oh, well, maybe not really, there's business to be focused on and there's targets to be met. And that's where, that huge dissonance comes in, and no matter how much you invest, people will lose credibility over there. So therefore, having established what we mean by how to strategize for change, I will just spend a couple of minutes on how do we, when do we do it and how do we create this strategy for change. And we do it through two steps in our process, which are the steps of investigation and identification. So investigation clearly says, let's establish the objective. And why do we want to do this change? Identification says, let's design a change strategy which is completely adapted to this organization. The way that we do it is through a very thought-through diagnostics. Again, what would happen in a diagnostics for a certain company will depend on the context of that company. But there are various tools which include surveys, FGTs, observations, work shadowing, mystery shopping, interviews, customer interviews, and a lot of other secondary data. And what we come up with is what are the things that will work in these organizations, what are the ritual stories, who are the heroes, who are the influencers, what has created success in the past, what has failed, what are some of our key observations, and also at this point identify some quick wins that can be implemented immediately so that the credibility of the change initiative gets built right at the outset. And then we design that entire change initiative where you talk about what are the critical success factors, what should be the action plans, identify the sponsors, and task them with the objectives that they have to meet. So clearly what we are saying till here in summary is that the fact is that we are all encountering change in one way or the other, so we don't really have the option of not wanting to strategize for change. Change is part of our life. We need to strategize. So the reason for strategizing is fairly clear. Then we've spoken about what does strategizing for change actually mean. It means the what has to change and why does that have to change, and then it means how will we bring about that change. So what is it that we will do to make that change successful? And there we spoke about certain examples of how certain things will work in certain organizations and others will not. So best practices are great to focus on, are great to pick up, but I think to be picked up very mindfully, seeing which of those will work for us and how will they work for us. Some very quickly, just taking a couple of moments on some cases. Of course, this presentation will be shared with you, so you'll get a deeper insight. But I'll just take 30 seconds on each of these cases. So this was for a global pharma company that I just spoke to you about, where the whole thing was on enhancing organizational effectiveness, and the strategy that we created for them was actually to first define what that organizational effectiveness meant and then seeing how that can be achieved in their organization. So that was a key element that was strategized there. There was another FMCG, again a multinational, where we worked on productivity and helping them build a productivity culture which also created a balanced way of working. And when we did the diagnostics over there, the key element of strategizing for change that we came up over there, the key finding that we came up over there was that, when the organization asked us to come in and do this initiative, they asked us to come in and do productivity workshops for 2,300 people that they had in India. And they said that, if we do this, we believe that our productivity will increase. And when we did the diagnostics, we went back to them and we insisted on presenting it to the leaders. And we said that, and at great cost, at great risk to our own, business, we said to them clearly, there is no point training your 2,300 people unless leaders sitting around this table change certain things, change certain behaviors, change certain asks that they have from their people. Unless they are going to undergo a complete process of considered prioritization, clearly articulate what they need from people, clearly articulate what productivity means for that company. Unless all of that happens, unless your people see you change, we can tell you today that they're all very cynical and skeptical about changing anything, because they believe that unless our leaders change, there is nothing that we are going to be able to do. So actually that whole initiative then started not with those workshops for those 2,300 people, but a very detailed intervention with leaders across levels on what is it that they have to change, and then we went in to change to train the workforce. Similarly, there was another organization where they wanted to get a certain value embedded in the organization. When we did the diagnostics with them, we realized that workshops were not a route to do that, because workshops would have limited impact. Instead, what we did was we just worked with a handful of their managers and trained them into how is it that they could bring that value to life in each of their teams. So what are the processes that they needed to apply with their team members, the skills and behaviors which would enable that value of customer obsession to come alive in each group or each team in the organization. Again, so no workshops were done. We did it through a huddle process where we trained the leaders to have huddles every week, and through that process that change was deployed. And that worked well with them, because there was a huge amount of cynicism in the system on workshops that we've done enough and more, and they don't really lead to anything. And similarly, another process of culture change that we did with an organization was again to work with a certain set of people internally and create them as champions for the change, because that's something that would have worked in that organization. So in summary, again, I think the critical point or the main point that we are making through our experience of having worked with change initiatives is that the critical driver of success in any change initiative is how well is that change strategized right at the outset. Do we have the right reason to change? Are we clear on what has to change? And then are we clear on how this change will be successful in this organization specifically? So that's what we wanted to share in terms of our own experiences, and I do hope that this has been of value to you, and I believe the recording will be made available to you in a bit. Just give me a moment, just looking for some questions that people have and that need to be answered. Okay. So there are a couple of questions that have come up, so let me just take them. So the first one is on who should be primarily responsible for driving change for it to have maximum impact and endurance. Very clearly it has to be the absolute top leadership team. It is not something, if the mandate of making a change successful lies with the HR function or with the L&D function, then there is something fundamentally not right in the way that change is being approached, because if that change has to be organizational, then it has to be an organizational priority. It cannot be the priority of one function. So if we are similarly, if you're talking about bringing about a change in customer centricity, it cannot rest with the customer service function, because then it's a functional change, it's not an organizational change. If it is organizational in nature, it needs to rest with the organizational leaders as a team all together. It cannot rest with one function or two functions alone. So leaders should squarely be responsible for driving that change. Leaders should squarely be measured on whether that change was successful or not. We have time for one more question, I think, and which is, what is the role that change partners and specialists can play? Considering the case that change has to be completely customized to an organization, and you know, people within the organization would know themselves the best. So why do we even need change partners and specialists? Yes, I was afraid that this would be one of the inferences that could be drawn. But let me try and answer that in our experience as to, you know, what is the role that change specialists and change partners bring. I think they bring two things to the table. One, their knowledge of of proven success and their knowledge of best practices that exist in the environment across industries. They bring to the table the experience of having applied some of them in various organizations and therefore experience of what has worked, what has not worked, and so on. I think more importantly what they bring is their ability to objectively do a diagnosis of the system, to objectively be able to ask tough questions to which answers are critical of why this change, what this change, and then to be objectively be able to say that, you know, this is what your culture is like, this is what will work here, this is what will not work here, and from the repertoire of best practices that exist and experience that exists, we believe that if we pick up these things and contextualize it to your environment, this could help you to come closer to success. That is the most critical role that change partners or specialists can play. The driving of that change, the implementation of the change is squarely has to rest with the organization. Wherever change partners tend to take that on and grab onto that, we believe change will suffer, because then it's not seen as the mandate of the organization, it's seen as the mandate of the change partner, which is what it should not be. So I think change specialists and change partners bring to fore the knowledge, the expertise, and the ability to contextualize it to your culture. I think that's what we have time for currently, and if there are other questions, we will take them offline. So Sumati will be making this recording available to all of you, and we'd be more than happy to hear from you on you know, what your experience was for this session, and if it created any value for you. And also we would be happy to hear from you on certain questions and provide answers to that. Thank you all very much for your time and attention, and look forward to connecting with you soon.